Hello, my visual novel appreciating friendos! I'm back with a new visual novel primer. For those who don't already know, visual novel primers are a series of informational videos where I do an overview of VN involving background information, basic story and gameplay info, and a tips and tricks section. By the end, I hope you feel ready to give this great strategy visual novel Daibanchou, otherwise known as Big Bang Age, a shot. Before we get started, let me slap this on. While this video contains no adult content, the game in question Daibanchou does have these elements, and I leave it to viewer discretion as to whether they decide to play it or not. I recommend the game regardless of whether this 18+ content exists or not, and while some content may not be for everybody, remember, the skip button is always an option. Daibanchou is one of several flagship gameplay visual novel series produced by Alicesoft, probably my favorite series by them right after Rance. The Dai-series is currently a trilogy of conquest strategy games, the kind where you build buildings, control and recruit many unique units, and conquer all the land until you're the last one left. I say trilogy, but each game's story is entirely independent from each other, with only the general gameplay flow staying the same. Daibanchou is the second game in the series, preceded by Daiakuji, followed by Daiteikoku. Daiakuji has an adaptation, but I am not going to talk about that. Probably ever. I might do other games in the series in the future. That said, Daibanchou tends to be the fan favorite, and my favorite as well, so it'll be the target of today's primer. Originally released in Japan in 2003, Daibanchou later got a pretty solid English translation back in 2010 by Aruduck, which I'll be using for this video, with a link in the description below. It's got a pretty sick opening which I'll put up right now. In the year 2000X, a super robot named Mega Man. Wait, my bad, wrong game. Alright, there we go. The year is 2000X, a giant hole erupts in the middle of Japan, causing the land and sea to fracture. Mysterious energy solidified known as B crystals start appearing everywhere, granting superpowers to young students. These young students, labeled thereafter as the special students, use their power to rule over Japan through violence and terror, and Japan is cut off from the rest of the world. A year later, one charismatic special student with great power forms a student union to bring order back to Japan. However, after uniting Japan in momentary peace, he suddenly disappears. Now Japan is split more than ever between various factions, like the Vampires of Nightmare Eyes, the Ninjas of the National Protectorate Institute, the factions of Kyoto, and the budding army of the PGG. With disorder and chaos growing more and more, Japan seems on the brink of destruction. However, the appearance of one man in a small school in Tokyo will change everything. Daibanchou is a game about recruiting a ton of unique and fun characters with their own special abilities, and reading through the events to learn more about them. It is also a game about managing many resources, whether it be the HP for characters who are always at risk of permadeath, the money it costs to keep them fed versus creating a more reliable source of income, or the loyalty bars so they don't decide to just quit your army suddenly out of nowhere. Aside from a difficulty level that is both fair and fun, there's a ton of choices to make between which characters to pick, hidden time-limited character events with requirements to find, and two incredibly distinct routes which change the experience dramatically. It's a game meant to be played over and over with no shortage of content to find. Comedy and writing is as solid as ever, the music is good old classic shade with its distinct flair, which you'll be hearing throughout this primer, and I hope you are as excited to give it a shot as I am to talk about it. There's a lot to go over for this game in comparison to Rance Quest. Daibanchou is quite a bit complicated and the game doesn't do the best of jobs guiding you what to do. So let's get started right away. Daibanchou is separated into 3 distinct story chapters: School, District, and National, with the first 2 being tutorial chapters which slowly introduce the mechanics while amassing your roster, and the last one comprising the vast majority of the game. I will be tackling mechanics starting from what you need to know during the School chapter, all the way till the beginning of National chapter. In School chapter, all we gotta worry about is getting a handle on the basic phases, unit management, and combat. So, when your turn first begins, a start of turn event will occur. These will activate depending on requirements you have achieved while playing throughout the game, whether it be from reaching a certain point in the game, conquering a region, having a specific character, so on and so forth. After seeing an event, if there's one, you'll move on to the first actual phase of the game, Region Phase. While we're on this screen though, let me point out that there's a bar in the top left that's part blue, part red. This bar is actually the game's time limit counter. Every chapter in this game has a total time limit to finish the chapter, with 25 turns for School, District, and 100 for National. Region Phase can basically be treated as the event phase. During this phase, you are allowed to choose one event to participate in, with events appearing depending on what regions you own, what characters you own in your roster, and what characters you have stationed in that region. These events are where you'll be doing the majority of your recruiting characters, as well as finding out about specific ways to take on rival factions. This is probably also going to be your most limiting resource, as there's always going to be a ton of events that have different benefits, but you can only pick one a turn. A quick note, right at the beginning of the game, you can and should pick up this item called Useful Cube in the event after taking the rooftop. This cube will place a star on any event during the region phase that is considered important, whether it be related to recruiting a character in some way, or an event that leads to the final showdown against the boss of the area. Why the game did not make this mandatory or make you start with it already is beyond me. On to the next big phase, Conversation Phase, where you can talk to your companions. Currently, the main benefit of this phase is to get more insight on the characters in your party, and start potentially working towards a character clear. Character clears are basically event milestones to achieve with the unique companions you get throughout the game. I say unique because you can also recruit random faceless characters who have no events. Whenever you get one of the 5 clears each unique character has, they will get a buff. The buff depends on how many stars you currently have, rather than which specific clear you get. I'll go into more details on character clears in the tip section later. Finally, we get to move on to the meat and bones of the gameplay, the deployment and battle phase. Deployment phase is where you select units from your army and you choose where to place them for the upcoming battles. Where to place units depends on which areas you want defended and which areas you want to invade. You can see what enemies are going to be in each area, the current HP values, and how many control points each area has. After you deploy your units, you move on to the battle phase. Every character has 7 important battle stats. HP, how much damage a character can take before permanently dying. Stamina, how many times a character can act during battle. Attack, how much damage is dealt when an attack connects. Hit, how likely you are to hit your opponent. And evasion, how likely you are to dodge your opponent. Accuracy in this game works on a simple hit subtracted by the evasion. So using this battle as an example, Hita has a hit of 95, enemy has 6 evasion, so Hita's chance of hitting is 89%. For the enemy, it would be a 67% chance to hit. Finally, the last 2 important battle stats are surprisingly not the 2 numbers to the right, but rather the range and counter stat. Range you can see right here and here. There are 3 ranges in the game, short, mid, and long. Probably the most important stat, it determines who hits first in a fight. So, if my mid-range Sanai hits this short-range unit, she will defeat the enemy and take no damage. Against a mid-range unit, however, they'll hit at the same time, and against a long range, she'll get the damage received first. Which brings me to the last stat, Counter. Counter is a unique stat in that for some reason it is displayed nowhere else but during battle. Every character has their own inbuilt initial counter value, and it is the percentage chance when hit first will the character retaliate with their own attack or not. Located in this slot are the unique abilities of a character if they have one, whether it be a passive that affects only themselves, a team passive, or a unique attack like Yuki's which avoids combat entirely. In the middle is an easy to see location for all team passives currently in play on both sides. Finally, over here is the attribute of the character, and to the right are what types they are strong against. Type advantage grants a 30% to hit, evasion, and counter rates. The amount of turns during combat is based on the maximum number of participants on either side. So if my lone rogue is going against 3 opponents, the battle will be 3 turns long. And if I have 2 units against 2 enemies, the battle will be 2 turns long. You can see which unit the enemy will deploy every odd turn, so 1st, 3rd, and 5th turn of combat. This can be circumvented by having a unit with the scout passive ability. EXP is split between all allied participants at the end of battle. You will also gain control points depending on how well you do in battle. Game goes by point system, which I'll show on screen. Both sides gain 1 point for hitting an enemy or using a skill, and 2 points for defeating an enemy. If you are winning with less than 5 points, it is a minor victory with 1 CP gained. 5 points or more is a major victory with 2 CP gained. And finally, if you have invaded an area with no enemies present, it is a total victory with 3 CP gained. When you have filled the invading area's CP, you have conquered it. After you've invaded an area and potentially took it over, we move on to the second part of battle phase, that being the defending part where the enemy will attack units you have stationed in their territories and potentially invade bordering regions. Unlike the player, enemies can invade as many places they want per turn. After battle phase, all characters who can level up at this point will do so, gaining combat stats based on RNG a la Fire Emblem. If a character has enough EXP to gain 3 levels, they will still only gain 1 level at the end of a turn. Also at the end of a turn, all units stationed do not heal and gain 1 stamina point back, while units in the army not stationed gain half their HP back and 2 stamina points. Starting District Chapter, we get introductions to 5 new mechanics: Heroine Phase, Income Phase, and BP, Items, Dungeons, and Prison. Heroine Phase is where you get to see the intimate scenes with all of Roga's main love interests. Outside of the obvious reason for their existence, these heroine scenes actually do give benefits to the player depending on the heroine, and also it accumulates relationship points with them. The heroine with the highest relationship level at the end of the game will be the character ending you get. There are 6 heroines and 5 unique bonuses you get. The 5 bonuses are as follows: HP recovery for Roga, 50 BP, loyalty recovery for all units, stamina recovery for Roga, and 500 BP. I'll throw my 2 cents on them in the tip section. Now we come to the more vital mechanic, that of income and BP. Coming into the district chapter, the game finally forces you to start paying for most of your actions. Any battle, whether you're defending or attacking, now costs 10 BP. As to how to earn this BP, we'll finally get to talk about region management, and these two stats characters have called Law and Income. At the start of every 4 turns, so 4, 8, 12, 16, and so on, you will now get money for every region you own and have units stationed in. This number here represents the maximum income this area can generate, and you fill it up by stationing units who fill it up differently depending on their income stat. At the same time, you will also need to pay for all your units during this time, with each unit's cost shown here at the pay stat. If you're going to go into negatives during any income phase, you'll be forced to retire members from your army until you can afford it. You'll probably notice from this screen alone that it's pretty much impossible for you to finance your army with the little income you generate during this chapter. Lucky for us, Brother Go will toss you 100 BP on turn 2 and 300 BP every subsequent income phase for this chapter, allowing you to ease your way into the idea of using money for the first time. Outside of income, each territory has a control score from 1 to 99. 90 to 99 represents a perfect control, with lower score indicating a higher percentage chance of order decline at the end of a turn. Decline in order leads to a chance of independent revolts appearing, territories not generating income anymore, 2 rats invading the area, forcing you to send units to deal with it. If the order level ever gets too low, as long as 1 person is stationed there, you can spend 10 BP to reset back to base order level. You fill up this control score by placing units in a territory, with the law rating of the unit indicating how much they contribute. District Chapter is also where you start getting items, which characters can equip one of and usually give some sort of bonus. Pretty self-explanatory. District Chapter also has the first dungeon you can go through. Dungeons are a series of battle encounters with no time limit, and are meant for characters to earn a lot of EXP, and usually there's some sort of reward at the end. They can be accessed during region phase, and when invading a dungeon you select up to 6 units, which cannot be switched out until the end of your dungeon dive. You can choose to complete a dungeon anytime after completing floor, and when you return, you'll continue from where you left off. The last big thing unlocked during this chapter is Prison. From now on, all enemies, unless specifically indicated by a gray box instead of a red box in battle, will be capturable. During any battle, if the enemy ends combat with a low HP, they'll have a percentage chance to be captured. It goes by 10% increments, so 1 HP is a 100% capture rate, 2 HP is a 90% capture rate, 6 HP is 50%, and so on and so forth. Capturing is super important, as it's how the majority of the cast outside of school chapter is recruited. During the beginning of every chapter, you can pick one prisoner you have captured to either recruit, interrogate, or release. Recruit makes the prisoner join your army, although some characters will not join unless specific conditions are met. Interrogate finds out important information if you have an event that requires it, has a really low chance of randomly giving you an item, or will be entirely worthless and do nothing. Lastly, release gives you BP depending on the enemy you select. Finally, we have reached National Chapter, where the game introduces the last 2 mechanics, loyalty and construction. Loyalty is going to be the biggest hassle for newcomers to the series, as if you look at every character, this bar right here is the loyalty. At the end of every turn, a unit's loyalty will decrease depending on how much the character likes Roga, which can be seen by the heart icon ranging from super best pals of 0 loyalty drop to barely tolerating his existence. You can raise these heart levels once by reaching the 3rd character clear for any character. Conversation phases now also allow you to spend BP to pop your characters, and will always recover loyalty, so keep that in mind when you pick which characters to talk to during this phase. The loyalty bar starts out maxed at green, will decrease to yellow, and will finally reach red. At red loyalty, a unit will have a percentage chance at the start of any turn to permanently leave your party, so always try to keep it from reaching red. The lower the red loyalty, the higher the chance. Starting National Chapter, you can start constructing 1 building in every territory you own. These buildings cost BP initially to construct, but grant bonuses ranging from increasing income all the way to lowering loyalty loss for units stationed in the region. Buildings are generally worth the investment and will aid greatly in completing the game. And with that, we are finally done going over the gameplay. I know there was a ton of information for a general overview, but the game has a lot of details I thought were important for someone running through the game for the first time. Now, if you want to hear how characters and routes work in the game, and some opinions on how to have an easier time beating the game, stick around. The tips and tricks section. Here I'm going to throw out all the tips I use to ease my way through the hardest difficulty of the game, which, consequently, should help you smash through your initial playthrough. As a heads up, there'll be minor spoilers regarding how routes work in the game. Let's start by tackling the biggest problem you'll probably have starting the game, and that is BP management. When you first get to the National Chapter, depending on how much time you wasted in the District Chapter, you'll be in a load of debt, as Brother Go had to get all that money from somewhere, am I right? With that in mind, you'll probably be desperately in need of cash to fund your invasions of enemy territories, and to keep your group from going bankrupt. In order to get more cash, you need to start invading fast, as the more territories you have, the more people you can station to earn more income every 4 turns. Every new territory means you have a new place to build a new building. While the game initially introduces 4 buildings to pick from, all of them help with loyalty loss or order levels, neither of which are immediate concerns. Early on, you can also unlock the handy engineering branch office, which gives you 50 more BP per income phase, but at the cost of lowering the loyalty of all units posted in the region every turn. This is garbage because you'll barely be able to keep up everyone's loyalty up as it is. Instead, get to Yokohama as soon as you can, which you start right next to. Once you take it over, trigger the event, suppress the Curry Museum, and then trigger the event after that, Curry. Doing that unlocks the 100 BP cost Curry Wolf building, which grants 50 BP per income phase, but doesn't lower loyalty and has no additional cost. From this point on, build Curry houses in literally every region you own. You can also trigger Curry research events later in certain areas, which increase the amount you gain per Curry Wolf by like 5 BP per an event. With your newfound Curry Empire, money becomes a non-issue about a third of the way through. One of the characters you get early on is Zanma Go, Roga's brother and self-proclaimed weakest man in the world. While his combat is utter garbage, he has a really good law and income stat which become highly useful. What is also useful and the game doesn't tell you is that when you station him in a new region for the first time, he will usually proc an event that leads to finding dungeons, unique characters to recruit, getting 300 BP early on, which is absolutely insane, and so on. As I feel it will be dumb to make a huge list of regions to go through, I'm just gonna say that make sure you station Go in every region you have conquered that aren't at risk of getting invaded. Selecting Kuga during the conversation phase for the first time unlocks Roga's super move, which is incredibly useful since Roga has to 1v1 most of the bosses of every area, and with his super move, he'll generally be able to defeat all of them pretty easily. As I mentioned previously, you are locked to invading one area per turn. This can become quite a hassle, especially when territories start having upwards of like 7 CP, and you're capturing at a max of 2 CP per turn with major victories. The main tactic to capturing as fast as possible is to station units in enemy regions you plan on conquering in subsequent turns. That way you can retaliate during the enemy's turn when they attack you to get rid of all the units stationed there, so when you invade, you will get a total victory netting 3 CP instead of 2, as enemies will only replenish their units during their invasion phase. These one-turn saves add up when you do it for every single 3 CP or higher territory. I touched upon this earlier in the overview section, but there are 6 main love interests for our hero Roga, and while I have some personal bias on who I like more, talk about his size best girl, in terms of the bonuses they give, there are definitely some that are more useful than the others. You unlock heroine scenes and bonuses by recruiting them and then talking to them during conversation phase. The reason why Kain's bonus is mysteriously 10 times better than Sanai's is simply because Kain is someone you generally get only near the latter half of the final chapter, so by that point BP isn't too much of an issue, and 50 BP is kind of a joke. The most useful bonuses I'd say are Sanai's 50 BP in the beginning, since you're probably really fiending for money at that point, especially on a hard mode playthrough. The other great one is Shion's, since she gives a mini loyalty boost to all units in the army, which tends to be what you're lacking at that point in the game. Kain is obviously an upgrade to Sanai's, but at that point I think you should just be aiming for whoever ending you want to achieve, rather than trying to like min-max the benefits. As for why 2 of the heroine bonuses are the same, it's because while Daibanchou has 6 endings for each of the heroines, there's really only 2 different storyline routes to the game that are based on the main love interests, Kunagi or Senna. Early on in the district chapter, you're given a choice as to which of the 2 rivals you want to defeat first. At this point, Kunagi and Senna will both put out the recommendations on who to take out. What the game does not inform you about is that this is actually the big route split moment, which you will see at the beginning of the national chapter. Whichever the 2 suggestions you decided not to take will be removed from your party for the rest of the game due to story reasons. While there are 6 endings, the 2 main love interests get top billing, so to speak. If you want to play the game as few times as possible, but experience everything important, I'd say at least go through both main routes. Now we get to everyone's favorite section, characters. A huge part of Daibanchou is the characters you will recruit as you play through the game. Nearly no one is technically required outside the main heroine, Roga, Sanai, and Go, but recruiting different characters and seeing their events is what kept me coming back over and over. And one of the biggest aspects of Daibanchou, especially during the first 2 chapters, is that you have to decide which of the characters to recruit, and which to leave behind. With the most important being the choice between Sanzo and Ren, as those are the aforementioned rival factions that decide which of the 2 main heroine routes you will play through. The characters you do not pick will not be recruitable, which really emphasizes the idea of playing the game more than once. Some of these early characters you pick tend to become mainstays in your army, so they are pretty important in my opinion. Before I get into my recommendations, let me say that always feel free to pick who you like based more on appearances or the character events that introduce them to you. In the end, Daibanchou is a strategy game about utilizing your favorite characters, and I certainly didn't make my army based solely on how good they were. Alright, so let's start from the school chapter characters. First off, you have the choice between the cute sword and bow twins Kendo and Kyudo against Erika and the two stooges. Erika is a decent mid-range fighter with anti-normal type, which is incredibly useful in the first 2 chapters of the game, when a good majority of the enemies are normal type, and her 2 companions, Saki and Shoko, are both decent long-range fighters who have a low upkeep and 2 good passive buff skills. On the other hand, Kendo is an absolute powerhouse of a mid-range fighter with an insanely high attack value and a special attack that only makes it even higher. She scales incredibly well into the national chapter, with her only downside being a low counter rate, which means she'll do terribly against long-range enemies, and that she leaves if Kyudo ever dies. Kyudo is also a pretty strong long-range character with a solid attack, but with low HP and evasion, which means she'll easily die early on to other long-range enemies, or enemies she doesn't kill to have a high counter rate. Also, Murasaki, who requires Kendo to recruit later in National Chapter, is much stronger and cuter than Comet-san, who Erika recruits. My recommendation here is to the Nakanishi sisters, Kendo and Kyudo. Moving on, now you have to choose between Baseball Girl and Swim Girl. While Nanana has a decent attack value and is mid-range, she also has an incredibly bad team passive, which makes all enemies double their counter rate. Doesn't sound too bad until you realize how important HP is as a resource, and doubling the counter rate absolutely demolishes it. This can be changed to a really good passive skill through a specific character clear, but chances are you won't be able to see it until way late in the national chapter. Mizuki, on the other hand, is amazing with an incredibly high dodge rate, and one of the only 2 characters with a scout passive ability, which she unlocks through character clears, just like Nanana, only hers is a bit earlier. Scout is one of the best team passive abilities in the game, as it allows you to see what unit the enemy is fielding at all times rather than half the time. Combined with her high dodge rate growth, she ends up becoming one of the best short-range characters in the game. Her only real weakness is that early on, she's a pretty weak character. If Nanana didn't start with such a terrible passive, there might be some contention, but she does, so pick Mizuki. The 2 teachers who both should probably be behind bars. Both aren't very good fighters, but their skills are what makes or breaks them. Ijuin is the only other character aside from Mizuki to have the scout skill, except he starts with it unlocked from the get-go. Ijuin is also a mid-range with a strong attack. His big downside is that his accuracy is quite terrible, but it can be mitigated with items. On the other side, Francine has a 20% capture rate skill, which sounds good on paper until you realize how capturing works. Leaving an enemy at 3 HP is not that much harder than leaving an enemy at 1 HP. Outside of that passive, Francine is just a mediocre fighter, better than Ijuin early since her accuracy is average, but she gets outclassed really fast. The recommendation easily goes to Ijuin. Our choice here this time lies between Occult Lolly Kinako against Country Hick Boxer Burai. Kinako has pretty much the exact same problems as Ijuin, except she has even higher attack and a 2 stamina special attack called True Aim, which guarantees she hits during combat. This, however, is offset by her low HP and again, low hit rate without activating her special. You would only field her against short-range enemies to abuse her mid-range. Burai, on the other hand, is an absolute beast of a short-range fighter, with above average HP, decent attack, good accuracy, and has a special ability to guarantee he dodges the next attack no matter what at 2 stamina. His anti-normal is amazing for the entire early game, while Kinako's anti-white and black are better for the latter half of the national chapter. Burai is my recommendation. That said, I know most of you are going to pick the Occult Lolly anyways. Finally, we have reached the last choice I'm going to talk about, and this one is a doozy as it decides how the rest of the story will play out. Daigo and Kyoko are extra characters that you don't necessarily have to recruit. However, Sanzo will not join you if Daigo is already on the team, and Kyoko will kill Ren if Ren is on your team, which is why they're separated like this. On a side note, Kyoko killing Ren is one of her character clears. I'll skip over Daigo and Kyoko, however they are both worth picking up. Alright, so, Ren versus Sanzo. Both characters you can't really go wrong with. Ren is a strong mid-range fighter with a unique attack that has a chance to steal items, which is super good. Sanzo, on the other hand, is an absolute tank with a fat 122 base HP and a special attack that reflects enemy attacks, amplifying them while having the damage Sanzo takes. Again, they're both good, although Sanzo's a little more useful. The real question here is whether you want to take Kunagi or Senna, as this choice majorly impacts the course of the game. Just pick whoever you like more, as they will be the centerpiece of the story. That said, if I had to rate them, Kunagi is absolutely busted with a high evasion stat, both base and growth-wise. It gets so high that nearly no one can even hit her throughout most of the game. The rest of Kunagi's stats are also above average. Senna, on the other hand, is a great mid-range unit with a passive that full heals her at the end of a turn, even if she is stationed in a region. Good counter rate, high attack, decent HP. It's just unfortunate that her competition is absolutely busted. Kunagi is the easier time for sure, but again, pick whoever you like on this one. There are tons of more characters in the national chapter, however, I leave the rest for you to find out during your own playthrough. And the last topic I'll cover are character clears. Character clears are probably the biggest reason for players to want to replay the game. These involve going through all the events involving the characters and learning more about them. Every character has 5 clears, and getting all of them for a single character is pretty hard, and is different for every character, ranging from talking to them 3 times in conversation phase, all the way till having like 5 specific characters who are all missable stationed with that character. With this in mind, my suggestion is to play the game blind, or if you want to see as many events as possible, use the Alicesoft wiki link I've linked below in the description box, which has all the requirements for every character and the join condition listed. I think, frankly, without having that guide, most of the character clears are too hard to randomly stumble upon. Characters with 3 or 5 star clears will be recorded at the end of a playthrough, and will start with buff stats in subsequent playthroughs. And that's that! If you've gotten this far, chances are you're probably more than well equipped to play the game. So I say give it a shot! It's a ton of fun, I've played it all the way through at least 4 times, and I always had a blast. If you have any additional questions about the game, or need more help, check out the link to the wiki page I put in the description, or throw me a comment. Holy, this one took me a while. Mostly because I had to play through the entire game to remember all the stuff about it. I think this ended up being less of a primer, more of like a comprehensive game guide. I will probably try doing the next primer on a visual novel without gameplay, since it allowed me to talk more about the story and characters. If you got any suggestions as to what I should cover next, throw me a comment. As always, if you like or dislike the content, the buttons are down below, and if you would like to support and stay updated to the next video, tap that subscribe button by clicking the logo and hitting the bell icon that appears. With that, I'll see you next time.